This is Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethany.
And we are the Youngs.
Welcome.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. And we have thoroughly enjoyed our study over the last couple of months.
Oh, it has been amazing.
And some of our most popular, probably, podcasts as far as being liked and shared, and questions and follow-ups and comments. And I hope you enjoyed our interview with Gary Thomas as much as we did.
We really did. I just love from his books and then from the interview how he can take these biblical truths and just kind of boil them down to right where we are in daily married life.
That is so true.
It's just very helpful. It was helpful to me, and I hope it was helpful to all of you.
That is very true. And this week we are actually in Indianapolis, Indiana, at Thompson Road Baptist Church. And so if you live in the Indiana area, we're Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so if you get this in time, join us if you live in that area for one of the services.
To see you.
And then this weekend is the, First Baptist Church, Eaton, Ohio, couples retreat.
Yes, we've been talking about that a while.
We have. It's probably full by now, but if you still were thinking that way, you could at least give the church a call and find out. We're meeting on the north side of Cincinnati. I think it's Westchester, at a motel there for the Friday night and Saturday morning. So we're looking forward to that. And of course, as you know, we have just quite a few others coming up as well. We have the ladies' conference coming up in March. There's information available about that. And then there's at Southland Christian Camp, we have the two couples retreats there.
Right.
That's coming up here in April. And of course, in the fall, we've been promoting this a long time. We're partnering with the Couples Prayer Advance.
Yes. And
you will enjoy our friends Harold and Debbie Vaughn and their staff, and our friend Dan and Holly are coming to help us do music.
Yes.
And that is going to be a phenomenal get-together, and we're looking forward to having many of you join us. A lot of folks already signed up.
Yes, and we've been hearing from people who said, hey, I'm coming to see you in October.
And we are really excited about that.
Yes, we are. And you kind of caught me off guard when you're talking about the ladies' meeting that's coming up. It may be already full, too, but that's Solid Rock Baptist Church in Noonan, Georgia, the Friend to Friend podcast live.
Sounds good. So check those out. If we can meet you in person, we'd love to do that.
We would love to see you.
We do have meetings coming up in Rochester Hills, Michigan. We have a meeting coming up at Sauk Trail in just the southern Chicago, northern Illinois area. Then we have a family conference in Ringo, Louisiana coming up, and a revival meeting in, Ponca City, Oklahoma. And so between now and Easter is a lot going on.
And then it's Easter, and we're going to come home and eat chocolate.
Is that what we're going to do?
and rest.
Well, bring it on.
Drink cups and cups.
Hey, one more thing before we jump into today's session. Many of you listen on your favorite podcast site, whether it's Apple or iTunes or Spotify. And it would be a real help to us if you'd take the time to rate us, leave us a review if you can, and even on social media, like and share. We would be very thankful for that, and we're checking all of that out and keeping up with all of those things these days. And so if you can help us in that way, we would be grateful. Yes. And let us know if we can help you in some way. Remember, there's the microphone on the keepingityoungpodcast.com site. You can voice us from there, send us a voice text. I guess that's what they call it.
Basically.
And you can also reach us on social media. If we can serve you, we're glad to do it. Are we ready to go?
I think so. We have a kind of a hot button issue topic today, I think. I don't know.
And we decided to do this one because we frequently get questions about in-laws.
We do.
And so I've put together just one session. This is a one and only, one and done. But I entitled it In-Laws, Outlaws, or Just Family. So
I prefer to think of the in-laws that have married into our family.
Yes.
I prefer to think of them as just family.
And I think the point is that it doesn't happen, without effort, without work.
That's very true.
And so sometimes we just accept a status quo. There's always the joking about the difference in in-laws and outlaws is that outlaws are wanted.
Oh, dear. Oh, that's terrible.
So there's a lot of joking about these, and how many mother-in-law jokes do we know?
Yes.
And some things are just in good humor and not issues, but this has always been a problem. In fact, the first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, introduces us to the family of Jacob. And Jacob had major issues with his father-in-law.
True.
And then even his wives had issues with their dad once they were in the family, and They were dishonest. Was it Rachel that was dishonest with her dad at the one point?
Yes.
And there's just all kinds of options. Once your family begins to spread out and there's marriage and there's grandchildren, there's mother-in-laws, there's father-in-laws, there's just all kinds of potential for problems.
Yes.
And so since we get quite a few questions about this, we really want to talk about turning in-laws into family.
That's very good. And you
that's
know
where
what?
we're
I was
headed.
just thinking about, you were talking about the story of Jacob and Laban. Both Jacob and Laban were conniving and deceitful people. And so hopefully your problems with your in-laws and family don't stoop to that, but
Let's hope not.
let's hope not.
But if you want to be encouraged, maybe you could read that story in the book of Genesis and you'll feel a lot better about your situation.
There you go. Or if it is your situation, maybe you'll be convicted and make some things right. I don't know.
That's true too. So we actually threw together 5 thoughts here, and just to challenge you. And this one I think I learned from Bethley's family. And so how do you take steps to win? These steps will help you to turn your in-laws into just family.
Right.
And so here's a big one. So simple for those of us who are believers. Number 1, pray with each other. Now that's about as simple as you can get it. But it occurred to me as I was thinking about this subject of in-laws that one of the things I always appreciated about your mom and dad is that they always prayed with us.
Yes.
And so we weren't always there, but when we were there, your dad never let us leave his house without a word of prayer. And anytime we would go on vacation together, anytime we did something together, he would pray with us.
Right.
And to hear him, pray for me and pray for our children and pray for you and pray for our marriage, probably more simple than we realize and more profound than we realize is praying with each other.
Right. But don't you think it's one of those opportunities that we have as a Christian that we don't always tap into? We just forget that we should pray together. We think, well, why do I need to pray with them? We're not going through any issues right now. And obviously, if there's an issue, our son Matthew, many of you know, is facing some health crisis, and we FaceTimed with Matt and Kareth the other night, and we made sure to pray with them before we ended the FaceTime call. So issues, yes, we would think to pray, but sometimes we're just together all the time, and we never think to pray beyond maybe asking the Lord to bless our meal.
Sure. And you could even kind of add maybe a second thought to that, not just praying with each other, but praying for each other.
Yes.
And so pray for your family, pray for your mother-in-law, pray for your father-in-law, and you parents pray for your daughter and son-in-law.
Absolutely.
And really, mean it. Take them to the Lord and build each other spiritually. That's a great place to start, I think. Pray with each other.
Right.
That can help you to turn your in-laws into family. And then here's the second one. Let's just jump right into it. The second one is respect differences.
Yes, that's a big one.
It is a big one because the one thing you will find very quickly is that every family does things unique to them.
Yes.
And if we're not careful, we can allow the differences to drive us up a wall.
Right. Well, I would say even before you respect the differences, you should expect them. Sometimes
That's
we marry
fair.
into a family and you go to your first holiday at your in-laws' house and you're like, this is not right. What are they doing? This is not how you do Christmas, or this is not how you do Thanksgiving, just because it's so different.
Sure, this is not the right way to do it. This is not the tradition. So you do expect them, but then remember, as you expect them, to respect them.
Yes.
It is okay for families to be different. And in fact, it's more than okay. It is normal for every family to be different.
Yes.
And even our own family, the way your family celebrated Christmas and the way my family celebrated Christmas was daylight and dark.
Vastly different.
And the way we did Easter and just all kinds of things. And when we came to the point of saying, that's okay, that's good.
Yes.
It's okay the way, your mom and dad, it's okay the way my mom and dad did it or didn't do
Absolutely.
it. So, there's times that your family would celebrate something that my family really didn't celebrate that. But it was absolutely okay. So respect those differences. Don't let them become an issue to where you criticize each other, you tear each other down. The Bible does say that we're to love each other. And the Bible says that we're to be kind one to another, tenderhearted, and forgive one another.
Right.
And the Bible says, as much as lieth within us, as much as lies within us, we are to live peaceably with each other.
Yes. And I think one of the things that we have to be careful of, I think especially maybe as a girl, either the mother-in-law or the daughter-in-law, because we are the ones who are the housekeepers. We're the ones who make the celebrations happen. Maybe when things are so different, we can allow that just to kind of fester in our hearts a little bit. And then every time we think of it, we just get so irked and irritated, instead of just saying, you know what, that's great that she can celebrate in that way, or she sets her table that way, or she serves whatever meal. So we just have to ask the Lord to help us with that, though. I think especially as women.
Sure.
I don't know,
So,
from a man's perspective, you may take that differently.
Often it's true that men are a little more take it as it is,
Right.
whereas women tend to feel it as it is.
Yes.
And so the respecting of the differences is just a simple statement. It can be as simple as, I can show respect by being grateful and saying, you know what, we don't do it that way, but that's really, and the way you said it there, that's really great the way you guys do it.
Right.
Or we can just be thankful that we have Christian families, or that our families do even just celebrate something,
Yes.
or whatever. So gratitude will go a long way in respecting those differences. So if we're going to turn in-laws into family, we have to pray with each other and for each other.
Yes.
And we have to respect differences. And thirdly, I would say we have to recognize family authority.
Oh, yes. So what do you mean by that?
This is a huge one. In other words, there's two sides of this one. When our children get married, when our older three have gotten married, they
Yes.
are now a new family.
Right.
And we have to recognize that.
We do.
Our Abby is married to David, and he's the head of the home there.
Right.
They have a new family. And our Joshua is married to Bethany. They have their own family.
Yes.
Matt and Gareth have their own family.
Yes.
Someday we think Jacob will get married. He'll have his own family. When Charity gets married, their own. We have to recognize these are new families. And because they're new families, they're also bringing together two different perspectives. Like we know that our Abby is married to David, and his family, they did things the way they did it. It was their traditions, their ideas, their their way of celebrating things. That's a new family. Now those two are combined together.
Yes.
It's probably unreasonable, I would think, and you'd agree with this, wouldn't you? It's unreasonable to expect our children to get married and their families to be the exact mirror image of our family, because they're bringing in an in-law.
Right. Right.
And you expect that to be different. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that Abby cannot go into her marriage with David expecting that everything's going to be the same that it was done in the Young household. And David will come into his marriage with Abigail not expecting everything to be the exact same way it was in the Adams household, and they will make a new Adams household. So
Sure.
they do things differently
And I
for
remember
both of us.
even when we were first married, as a new family unit, we were also connecting to your mom and dad,
Yes.
and you were connecting to my mom and dad. And I do remember the awareness of how different. There's a lot of differences here.
Yes.
And yet, over the years, we've developed our styles. So
Yes.
the Young family and the Dennis family and me and you have come together, and now there's a new family combined with Young Dennis.
Absolutely.
And so our traditions, our ways of doing things. And so you just simply recognize there's a new family authority. You're a new family when you get married. And so from the children's perspective, recognize and be prepared for the fact that there's a new family here.
Yes.
But this is also a parental perspective. So when I say recognize family authority, you moms and dads that are listening to us, as your children get married, recognize their new family authority.
Yes.
You do have to recognize that.
Yes.
And you have to recognize that they are a new unit, they are on their own, and we don't have to be twins.
Right. Well, and we don't have the authority to make them so.
That's very true.
So there's no reason for me to, and I have not done this, so this is an outlandish illustration, but
Outlandish.
to go to Abigail's house or Bethany's house or Kara's house and take over and say, oh, I'm sorry, you're doing this wrong. This is how we do it in the Young household, and you married a Young, so this is what we're going to do. I have no authority to do that, and I should not expect that at all.
And I could even say to you ladies, be cautious about that, because we have along the way had to deal with issues to where mom comes in and says to the daughter-in-law, this is my son. This is what my son eats. This is how my son, this is what he expects, because this is what I've done for my son. And moms, I will tell you that you can't do that.
No.
Because all you will do is you'll turn the in-laws into outlaws.
Yeah.
And-
You will turn your daughter-in-law against you.
Yes, or your son-in-law, as the
Yes.
case may be. And so recognizing family authority is huge. Bethany and I have worked diligently to make sure that our children are their own unit. And even when we would say, well, that's different, or, well, that's a unique way to do it, or we probably wouldn't do it that way, They don't need to know that. And we can still, rather than criticize, we can celebrate that this is a new family unit.
Absolutely. And I feel like all of our girls and boys are doing such a great job
on
their own. And it's so fun to go visit them and kind of experience how their family lives. And here's the thing, moms of married children, you can go and you can have such a great time and just enjoy their schedule and their meals and whatever they do in their home unit. And then when you're starting to feel like, wow, this is just not how I live, it's okay. Hang on, because you're about to go home and then you'll miss them.
You sure will. And, I speak a ton at camps, and for many summers we spent a lot of time in camp. And working with teenagers and juniors, one of the things we would encourage them to say a lot of, especially early in the week, because they find out that the camp is all fun, they're so excited, but then the food's not maybe what they thought it would be, or they didn't like the schedule, or it's too hot, or it rained a certain day. And so really attitude changes all of that. Mm-hmm. And so when I would say to like juniors or even teens, no matter what happens this week, just say this: isn't this great? It is pouring rain. Isn't this great? Mm-hmm. My room is cold. Isn't this great? Or it is so hot here, I'm dying. Isn't this great? And really what we're saying is that as you recognize family authority, you celebrate it.
Yes.
And look at your, son and daughter, and you don't ignore error. If there's an abusive situation, we're not talking about that. We're talking about in a normal, we're just about differences to where his family didn't do it the way your family did it. And we're talking about, you just have to recognize this is a family authority.
Right.
Each of your children are their own family. And by the way, for you that are younger and married, sometimes, an in-law can look at his in-laws or her in-laws and scratch her head or be puzzled, but just recognize their family authority. They may have done it totally different than your family did, but it's entirely okay.
Right.
We are all different. There's no such thing as twin families.
No.
They don't exist. So recognize family authority. Any other thought you'd add to that before we give point number 4?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a good point just to remember.
Very
They're their
powerful.
own family unit, and you just celebrate it and let them be and enjoy it while you're there, and then go home and do it the way you've always done it.
Absolutely. So pray with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
How do you
differences.
turn in-laws to just family? You recognize family authority. And here's number 4.
Yes.
And I like this one. Don't ignore elephants. and I started a joke there and say, I'm not talking about your mother-in-law.
Oh. Maybe we should have
terrible.
left that out.
Probably should have.
Yes. I'm thinking you're talking about the elephant in the room.
That's what I'm talking
Yes.
about here. Don't ignore the elephant in the room, because here's what we find out. A lot of times there's an issue, and we let the issue go.
Yes.
And we let it go, and we let it go. And often what happens is it's an issue that frustrates us, and we share it with our spouse, and it frustrates them. Maybe even with our children, and it frustrates them. And maybe with our friends, and it frustrates them. And rarely do we take the issue and address it in a way that solves the issue.
Absolutely.
We tend to ignore the elephant, but that will never, ever, ever, ever solve the problem.
And honestly, sometimes if there is a, quote, elephant in the room, you're the only one who knows it's there. It could be that you have the issue and the in-law that you have the issue with has no clue that you have the issue.
None at all. So I put that in as a separate statement, because 4 and 5 here go together.
Yes.
Don't ignore the elephants. And if you're going to take steps to solve an elephant in the room, it leads us to point number 5, and these two will go together.
Yes.
Don't ignore elephants. And number 5, communicate with each other.
Absolutely.
Communicate with each other. If something is off balance, you have to say so. Or if someone is causing an issue, it has to be addressed. It has to, number 1, you have to make it known. They may not even know
Right.
that there's an issue in your heart or in your life. God gave us this great gift, and you've heard us say this in relation to marriage. One of the greatest things God gave to us in our marriage is the gift of communication,
Yes.
to where we can say, this is wrong, or needs to be repaired, or let's work on this, or I'm feeling this, or I'm thinking this, or I'm not sure about this. Communication is a phenomenal gift, which is why the Bible addresses it so often.
Right.
And so what we've got to do is communicate about the issues in families to cause in-law issues to go away, so that we're just family. That's all we are.
Right.
And we're very close to each other. So
I would just interject here that if there is something that has been the proverbial elephant in the room with you for a long time, I would take some time to pray about that and ask the Lord to help you, because if it's been irking your heart a long time and then all of a sudden it happens again, you don't want to be like, well, they said on the Keeping It Young podcast that we need to address this right away and just let all that just spew out of your mouth, because that would cause probably a bigger problem than you already have.
I think what my wife is saying there is you don't want to make it worse and blame it on us, is what she's saying.
No, I wasn't saying that. I was just saying, be careful. If this has been an issue in your heart, you will, if you don't go into it prayerfully and carefully, you could make the issue bigger.
That's very true. And one of the things we would suggest is this: remember that either the closest relative or the blood relative, if I can say it that way, is probably the one who should initially handle this.
Yes.
If there's an issue with in-laws, then like if it's my mom, I should handle that because I'm the blood relative. If it's an issue with your parents, as much as possible, you should handle that because you're the blood relative.
Yes.
And so if that's at all possible, make sure that you handle it yourself. Now, sometimes that's not possible, either because maybe maybe your spouse or maybe you're the one and there's some insecurity, or that's just not your personality. You're non-confrontational, and yet there's an issue that's getting bigger.
Right. I could also say that in dealing, we just had minor issues that would come up maybe with my parents, and I feel comfortable saying this because they're both in glory. But we would have some minor issues that would come up, and being the daughter, it would be so hard on me to go to my mom and dad and be like, this is a problem. We need to fix it. Could you help me with this? Because I never wanted to disappoint them. I was always the one. I wanted to be the good girl always, even as a married woman in my own established home. And so often, I don't even say often, because I can only count on one hand how many times we had to sit down with mom and dad to talk about something that might have been a minor issue, but we would sit down together so that David would be there with me. He would be supporting me, and he would actually lead the conversation, and then I could just interject, and I felt more secure in that environment. And so I don't know if other wives would feel that way. If you're just like, oh, I would hate to say this because this would really hurt my mom or this would hurt my dad to talk about it, then take your husband with you.
Sure. And I know that you were so close to your mom and dad, and yet it was still awkward to talk about sometimes a elephant in the room, no matter whether it was a huge elephant or a little one.
Right.
It was just still awkward. So these are challenges. And so if the blood relative, if you as the closest relative can handle it, do so. If that isn't possible, the other, your spouse can, or the two of you, as Bethany just said, can go together. And so here would be the 5 steps we would talk about in communicating about it. And the first one would be to just schedule it. And even when you schedule it, say, hey, there's something that's really been bothering us that I just would like to have coffee, or can you guys come over for dessert and we talk about this?
Right.
And you just say, we love you, we care for you, but we really want to talk about this. Will you come over? You schedule it. And that way they're not blindsided.
Right.
They're aware that, we got to talk about this issue. And they may, it may be a matter of already you sense a tension about it, because these things, just expect that. These things are rarely something that's like, oh, great, let's have a little problem solving conversation. But you just schedule it, and then when you get together, you do these. You state the issue. Just say it. And if you can't articulate the issue before going into the meeting, you need to nail that down, even if you have to write it down.
Right.
To say, there's something happening and this really bothers me and I want to talk about it. And you state the issue. And then you ask questions is number 3. You ask questions. You say, can you understand why this is a concern to me? You write even down a list of questions. It's okay to write things down in these difficult conversations. And you say, is there anything you think we could do about it? Do you understand where we're coming from? You ask questions. I put this as number 4, refrain from accusations. Be very careful about saying, well, this is what you did.
Right.
This is what you do. Tone and accusations always result in defensiveness. And from that point on, it shuts down the whole conversation.
Right.
And then the last thing we would just say, you offer and ask for options. Offer them and ask for them. Options. If you go into this meeting with saying, do you even know what you want? So before you have the meeting, kind of have an idea. This is what we would like to ask you to do about this. Mom and Dad, would you do this? Son and daughter, would you do this?
Try not to make it nebulous. I think that's what you're trying to say.
So offer some options. Expect some pushback and maybe some negative reactions. Nobody likes being told that, I don't like how you do this.
That's very
true. So expect pushbacks, expect negative reactions, but I would say stand firm in what needs to be done, and then ask for options, and then accept a reasonable compromises. So if your in-laws offer a reasonable compromise, then accept it. So you know what? Let's try that.
Yes.
And then I would even say follow up on it later, come back later and say, hey, thank you for working on that because it's made things a lot better for us. And we are so grateful and we love you so much for doing that.
Right. You don't want to get to a place where there's nothing they can do to bridge that gap that has been made.
Sure.
So you want
and
to stay on top of issues, and then you want to accept when they are at least trying.
Yes, and we are running out of time here, but we just wanted to take this whole session today and just, we know this is an issue. In-laws have always been an issue. We joke about them, complain about them, talk about them, but we are people of God, and we would just encourage you to do everything in your power to make your in-laws family.
Yes.
Just family. So pray with each other, respect differences, recognize family authority, don't ignore elephants, and communicate with each other. And if Beth and I can help you about that, send us a text, send us a message, send us an email. We'd be glad to try. All right.
Yes.
Any further thought, Beth?
I don't think so. I think we covered that pretty well.
All right. Hopefully,
and very quickly comparatively to the last few months of series.
Tried to shore this one up and do it right away.
Yes.
So, hey, thank you for joining us today. And remember, if check our itinerary, come see us if you can. We'd love to meet you in person, at least say hello and have you a part of one of our services. And in the meantime, this is Keeping It Young, and we'll see you next week.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production.